episode of Business Ambassadors. Today my guest is Marc Fairchild with Fairchild Property Services. Marc is a general contractor that I've been working with in a group and have heard great reviews about, and wanted to have him on the show so we could hear firsthand what all Marc does. Marc, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Dereck. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes. Can you tell me a little bit about Fairchild Property Services, a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Sure. Fairchild Property Services is a licensed general contractor. There's three specific things we do. We are unique in that we work significantly and deeply with the real estate transactions. So we help people procure homes, as well as market and sell their homes.
Nice.
And then once they move in, we help them with protecting their property with the normal repairs, interior, exterior. And then we're also very engaged in bathroom remodeling, kitchen remodeling, basement remodeling, anything, garage remodeling, if you will. So those are the three areas that we've focused on traditionally, is the real estate market, and then once people are in their home or existing clients, help them protect their property with exterior repairs, interior repairs, and then remodeling, which has really taken off significantly with the economy rebounding.
Oh, sure. Sure, people getting their homes ready to get on the market.
Sure. And we've been in business for 7 years.
7 years? Great.
I'm a Noblesville resident. I've lived in Noblesville since 2001, originally from Indianapolis. The vast majority of our business is in the Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield areas. But we cover most of central Indiana.
Most of central Indiana.
Most of central Indiana.
Good. That's great. And has there been times, you have any stories of maybe when someone is a DIY and they got halfway through and said, never mind, I need to come talk to Marc? Have you?
Yeah.
Do you have any people where they get a project going and just say, hey, I need to get a professional? Because I could have used you this weekend, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, actually, a better strategy is in what we've done in the past is to partner with a client. And they may say, we want to do the demolition component of the project, and then we may come in and do the rough-in plumbing, the rough-in electrical, help them with some of the project planning, and then come back and do the finishing part of it, and then they may do the painting and flooring. So we've done some hybrids like that. Yes, we've come in midstream where someone has maybe started a project and things have changed, or their appetite to do the project. It's always better to start from the beginning, where you can actually collaborate with the client and hand off and say, okay, we're responsible for this part, you're responsible for that part. And then we can bring to bear our experience with different products, different methodologies on how they can stretch their budget and work out timing and things of that nature. It's really challenging when a project has been initiated, and say our client purchases the home, and then we come in after the project when it started. So yeah, that happens. I mean, it's we all started off, even as a licensed contractor. I started off as a DIYer.
Sure.
And I was very fortunate that my dad and brother had this interest. My brother's a large commercial public project electrical contractor. So when you've been at our office,
Fairchild Communications.
Yeah, we're with him. So I have that experience as well, and. Really, I mean, like if you take a bathroom remodeling project, actually I listen on Saturday mornings to Dick Crum and that group. And, it's a complicated, you have ventilation, you have plumbing, supply and drainage, you have electrical issues, you have a lot of safety issues. Yeah, so there's an awful lot that occurs in a bathroom if you want it to function, as you expect it to. So
keep the wife happy.
Right. Those projects are complicated, and then you throw in, there's a wide array of finishes. I mean, you can go from a bathroom insert or bathtub insert, shower, to custom tile, custom glass configuration. So there's there's a ton of moving parts and a huge broad spectrum of finishes and things that people desire. So I can easily see how it can become, you know, overwhelming. We're a little bit fortunate in Hamilton County because most of the, you know, 85,000 homes or so that are occupied by owners are fairly new construction and standard methodologies.
Yes.
You know, when you dip down into Broad Ripple, Meridian, Kessler, Irvington, areas like that, you're dealing with homes that were built 100 years ago or 75 years ago that's had several iterations of remodeling.
Yes.
And some have been done by DIYers, some have been done by contractors of varying degrees of competencies, and those can be, you know, difficult to sort out. But we're somewhat fortunate up here in Hamilton County with that. For the most part, you know, it's a pretty standard landscape, if you will.
It's all new, yeah.
Structural things and so forth.
You're not getting wire wrapped in saran wrap.
Yeah, really, the most challenging projects, you don't see a lot of them in Hamilton County, mostly in those aforementioned areas. Okay. Are the properties that are being acquired from someone who's flipped it. So you have an investor, okay. And the investors are like every other range of professions. You know, some of their project planning and their work is, you know, stellar. They'll go in and they'll start with the bones of a house and flip it from that perspective forward. Others go in and you know, they focus in on the finishes and the floors and how to market the house. Those are really difficult because there's limited areas, i.e. the attic, the crawl space, the basement, that you can actually see the bones of the house. So my radar always goes up when I go into those houses because you know, you have to really bring to bear all your experience and say, okay, what am I looking at? Well, yeah, this tile floor looks great, but then you go in the crawl space, it's like the floor joists are sagging, there's rot on the decking, so you have to really dial in and pay more attention on a property like that, because it's easy to go in with new floor, new paint.
Oh yeah,
you can conceal a lot of issues, not necessarily that anybody's intentionally doing
correct,
but it occurs.
So. It occurs.
Yeah.
Is there a way that when people are looking at homes that they can kind of tell if it's just a facade or if it's been completely redone, or does it make more sense to work with the realtor and yourself to
well, definitely. I mean, we're somewhat unique in the marketplace in that our business started focused completely on real estate.
Okay.
So we've done, over last count over 6,000 inspection repair projects. That's where we're coming in and typically working for the seller.
Okay.
So a licensed inspector has evaluated the property, identified key concerns. The buyer and seller come to an agreement on what's going to be repaired. We then come in, usually in a short period of time, 10 to 30 days to get those repairs done.
That's good.
And they're a laundry list of repairs.
Right.
I mean, it could be from the roof all the way down to the basement, including the HVAC system, plumbing system, electrical system. Some of them could be aesthetic repairs. Usually they're safety driven or functional, is what I would call them.
It's the honey-do list on steroids.
Yeah. So in those, we've never missed a closing. We've not ever been the reason why a property didn't close.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of experience. And a lot of times, and people don't realize that the buyers will come back and have their original inspector do a re-inspection, just to make sure the whole, the contractor and the seller are accountable that they've fulfilled the terms of the contract. That process is great as well. We attend all the re-inspections to make sure that that we're on target and we're delivering on the promise.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So and that's an interesting process in and of itself, in that when buying a house, I always recommend my clients, I did as well, is I hired a licensed home inspector. We're not a licensed home inspector, we're a licensed general contractor. But that's an incredibly important baseline assessment of the property.
And I made a mistake when I bought my last home. We were in a hurry, our home sold, other home sold real quick, and we found ours, and we accepted the pre-inspection that the seller did and did not do a full inspection at the end, because we wanted to get into it quick. And then once we got into the house, we realized we should have done a full inspection, because there would have been a whole bunch of other things that they would have seen. So that's a good point to make.
Yeah.
Have a full inspection done.
Yeah. By a, usually the realtors recommend inspection company. There's a tremendous number of good inspectors. Their inspection is somewhat limited too. You know, they're not going to be removing drywall. They're not going to do anything that's going to cause damage to the property. And that's, to get back to your original question, where you can see the most from a house is any space that's not finished. So a crawl space, basement, attic, where you're able to see kind of the bones, if you will, mechanicals. I mean, of things that you can look. I have moisture meter equipment. I have cameras that are scoping that I can use to probe, and then experience. I mean, you tend to look, and that's one of the things that I think with consumer culture that exists right now, especially commodity, and people tend to gravitate towards a specialty, and it's very difficult, I think, for the consumer to hone in on, okay, what is it that I need? And as a general contractor, I bring to bear all those resources. As my license allows me to do that in an umbrella structure. Okay. And then there's licensed electricians, plumbers, certified mold people, et cetera, that I partner with, that I bring to bear for my clients. But then I also look at that in the context of what does the property need as a whole. So there's things that I would see that an inspector would see that, if you call a plumber out for a problem that you're having, you're going to get a plumber's perspective.
Correct.
I mean, last week I was at a property where a person was concerned about mold around the top of their upstairs hall bath. And the plumber came out and said, well, you don't have a plumbing issue. It's like, okay, where do I go next? And they happened to call a couple of mold people out and came and looked at it and said, well, we think you might have a mold issue. But we're not really sure where the water's coming from. So then I got involved and figured out that actually they didn't have a biological growth issue or mold issue. They had a candle that was being burnt that left a black discoloration. But they did have a roof leak.
They did have a roof leak.
Yeah, and I asked my potential client, did anyone get in the attic? They said, well, no. Well, I used my moisture meter to show that the water damage that you could observe there was not active. But it had been wet in the past. And then got in the attic, inspected the decking, pulled back the insulation. The attic side of the ceiling was moist. And then I found a clip that holds the decking together. It actually pierced the shingles, and I inspected the top side of the roof. And then while I was there and looking at the roof, I found it was a 4-year-old architectural shingle roof. With a very good manufacturer, but there were a couple elevations on the roof that had advanced deterioration. So I said, this product is warranted. We need to get hold of the manufacturer. And I think that's the difference between, bringing to bear a specialist that focuses on one thing versus someone like myself that kind of looks at the house as a whole.
As a whole.
Yeah. So it's like when someone calls you out and says, I have a door that's rotting. So you go, an exterior door, and you need to replace the door. You need, I think the next step is to explain to the client, okay, this is why this door rotted. We have a gutter issue. Yeah,
you're going the full.
Or you have, some other breach in the system that's allowing water to collect there. So in some ways, I'm very grateful that we started off on the discipline of the real estate transaction, because you have a compressed period of time to complete your project. It's going to be evaluated by someone you don't know, i.e. the inspector or the buyer. You don't know what their level of experience is, and it brings to bear. If you invite me out to your home and I do a project for you,
I'm going to, by the way.
I'll turn around and I'll say, Dereck, how does it look to you? Are you happy? And you're going to say, well, yes or no, and we go from there. And while you may have an extensive DIY background, you're not going to know that there's these certain pieces that you can do. And I run into that a lot as well, where a seller will say, I just had company ABC put the disposal in or put the furnace in, and now the inspector's saying, these things weren't done correctly. And how does that happen? And I try to explain to people that they didn't necessarily underservice you. They're just not maybe either up to speed or aware of some of the fine points that should have been followed. So it's not that they necessarily did a bad job. It's just when someone's coming back and going through a list that's very hyper-focused, there's some little things here and there that that they should have done as a repair provider. So
go that extra step. I feel like at Fairchild Property Services, you guys go above and beyond. I mean, you go the extra step to look and see what's really causing the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's difficult because I think a lot of times consumers misunderstand that as a sales tactic. What I try to do, and our business is our business model is completely based upon referral. It started with the relationships with our realtors, and then by extension their clients as they sell and buy homes, and then with our own client, referral basis for repairs and remodeling. But everything we do is by referrals. I mean, we're an Angie's List Super Service Award winner. We've received awards from Tucker since we've been affiliated with their home services program. I'm not very interested in advertising and being at that large, an at-large service provider because I think the relationship is critical.
Right.
Long-winded answer. It's difficult because I look at when I go into any property, I feel like I owe it to our clients to say, hey, I'm seeing these things over here, and not that they're necessarily urgent or that I'm advocating that you repair those. But you need to be aware of them, at least a baseline awareness. Because if I don't do that, I don't feel like I've done them correct. I've performed the services that I would want if I had them to my house.
Oh, sure.
I mean, earlier this spring, a client that's become a great client. We did one bathroom while there, started doing the second bathroom, and then did some modifications to their finished basement. But as I'm walking up to their house, I noticed the brickwork around their garage door. There's material settlement and some movement away from the framing. And from my perspective, I mean, I was there initially to talk to them about a small remodel in their hall bathroom. Not small, but a rather routine remodel. And while I wanted to talk to them about their bathroom, I just wanted to say, hey, before you spend X amount of dollars to do an aesthetic repair, let's talk about this garage. And they were taking it back a little bit. At first, like, well, I thought you were here to talk about the bathroom. I said, I'm totally here to talk about the bathroom. I just wouldn't want you to spend the amount of money that it costs in the bathroom, and we have this issue out here in the garage. Let's take a look at this. So I always try to do that, and I always try to also not overreach, but just explain. If I own this home, this would be one of the concerns that I have.
That you would have.
And then we put it in the context of all the projects that they're looking at. But very grateful for the exposure to the real estate market, and we remain committed to that. And it's interesting now; it's become more of a seller's market. Homes are selling in a day, 2 days, 3 days. So buyers are going to have to accept that sellers are going to do less in the way of repairs. But there's more frequency of transactions, whereas when I started in the business in 2010, it was more of a buyer's market where buyers were demanding everything be repaired. So there were fewer transactions, but they were larger projects. So in some ways that helps us insulate ourselves from kind of the peaks and valleys. And it's also allowed us to keep and grow our employee base. With the real estate transactions, while there's more this time of year, they're continuous throughout the year. So several members of my team have been with me 5, 6 years since we started, because there's not that cyclical piece of the construction, whereas if someone only does roofs, they're going to be busy 5 months out of the year, maybe 6 months, or siding, or things of that nature, whereas we stay, fortunately we've stayed consistently busy, and have experienced a couple of years of 100% growth, 70% growth, 80% growth. This year we're on pace for about a 40% growth.
That's awesome.
And that was with trying not to grow. So yeah, that's good. So that's the to back to that general contractor perspective. I see the value of it time in and time out, where someone is called a specialist out to fix what the client identifies as a repair. And this isn't a criticism of that repair person. They're coming out and doing what they were asked to do that's in their wheelhouse. And I think it's a better strategy to step back and say, okay, how does this affect the other systems of the house? So,
that's great.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I know who I'm calling next time. but for sure, I mean, I feel like you look at the home and you would do you look at it as your home and
well,
what
yeah,
you
absolutely,
would do. So
absolutely.
I appreciate that.
One of the things that we're piloting with our current client base is a biannual service program, more focused in on an inspection. So that I'm in the house, or a member of my team is in the house, in the fall and the spring, because if you do catch something, the quicker you can respond to it, the lesser it costs in the long term. Usually it's the small water intrusion or the small water leak left unattended turns into biological growth, turns into tearing out cabinets, tearing out floors, so on and so forth. Whereas if we can catch that earlier in the process, what could have started with, maybe a bead of caulk, is now turned into a kitchen remodel.
Right.
So,
just thinking right now of what I have in my house.
Yeah, so we're piloting with customers that we've done, a lot of projects with in the past, to come out and really eventually package it for our real estate clients who have seen the consequences. If you're selling your home and the inspector comes in and gives you this independent third-party perspective of 30 or 40 pages of detailed analysis, seeing the value of that, and especially when you look at, even though a lot of the homes in Hamilton County is newer construction, seeing the value of coming in twice a year, plus it gives a baseline. If I've been to your home and you call and tell them on a Saturday night, hey Mark, my water heater just went out, and I've been to your home and I know that, you have a 40-gallon short electrical water heater that's located here that I can easily get to, I can dispatch our plumber to resolve that for you much more quickly than you calling someone that comes in, they have to drive out, figure out what you have. Maybe they have it with them, maybe they don't, versus we can show up exactly ready, knowing what you need.
Ready to go.
And then there's there's just a lot of things that we can do in those inspections where we can identify something and say, okay, this is something we need to monitor, this is something that's immediate, hey, this is something that we need to budget for in 5 years. You're going to need a roof, et cetera. And the same thing with insurance claims. I've had several clients where I've kind of done that process informally, and the big question always comes up, well, when did the hail occur? And I can say, well, I was on the roof in 2012, here's the photographs, 2013, 2014, 2015, there wasn't any hail. And now it's 2016 and we can see the hail damage. So just things of that nature that I think just add value tremendously, and it gives us the ability to be more responsive to our customers when something does come up, because things break. Mechanical things can break at any point in time, as you know.
Sure.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Fairchild Property Services. We're very grateful for our clients. We've been able to grow our business through the referral network. Like I said, I do think that we're uniquely at because of our exposure to the real estate transaction and the discipline that comes around that. One of the things that's interesting is in those transactions, and they can be as small as a few $100s or as large as $20,000. You have a finite amount of time to get that done. If I'm doing your bathroom and something goes wrong, I explain to you, this is going to affect our project schedule. Well, in those transactions, you have to get done by the closing.
Yes.
Or a couple of days before. So that's really, I think, allowed us to acquire some discipline that maybe a lot of our other competitors don't have. I mean, certainly things come up that you can't control, but just routine in and out, that sort of thing, I think brings us a unique perspective to the residential contracting space.
Well, I'm grateful that you were able to come on here and talk to us about Fairchild Property Services. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for my special guest, Marc Fairchild with Fairchild Property Services. If your spouse is on you to get that honey-do list done, give Marc a call, and he will be on it. Thank you, and have a great day. Who am I? Of course, who am I? I am Dereck Stinson with Star Financial, your small business banker. So if your company is needing some extra funds to help get a project off the ground, give me a call. Once again, Dereck Stinson, thank you and have a great day.